In a courtroom divided by racism, a young black boy boldly stands and declares to the judge, "You're my mom." What happens next is truly unbelievable. That morning, the courtroom was packed. Rows of spectators sat in heavy silence, their gazes darting between the judge's bench and the defendant's table. This case had drawn the attention of local media. A 12-year-old black boy named Jaden stood accused of trespassing in a wealthy neighborhood. Jaden sat at the defendant's table, his small frame almost lost in the oversized wooden chair. He wore a worn-out hoodie and baggy jeans, with scuffed sneakers that showed signs of wear. His trembling hands gripped the table's edge, betraying his nerves. Across the room, the judge, a sharp-featured woman in her late 40s, prepared to open the proceedings. Judge Rebecca Hart, known for her no-nonsense demeanor, was infamous for her tough stance on juvenile cases, particularly those involving kids from troubled backgrounds. As she flipped through the case file, her stoic expression gave no hint of emotion. The bailiff's voice rang out, "All rise for the Honorable Judge Hart." The command echoed through the high-ceilinged courtroom. Slowly, everyone stood, their movements stiff, the gravity of the moment palpable. Rebecca glanced down at Jaden, her gaze sharp and assessing. "You may be seated," she announced, her tone crisp and professional. As the room settled, she began. "This case involves charges of trespassing and loitering. Defendant, you are accused of entering private property without permission. How do you plead?" Jaden looked up, his wide, teary brown eyes glistening as though holding back tears. His public defender, clearly overworked and unprepared, leaned in to whisper something. After a pause, Jaden's voice wavered. "Not guilty," he finally managed, his words barely audible. The judge nodded curtly, jotting something down. "Proceed with opening statements," she said, gesturing to the prosecution. As the prosecutor began recounting the events, how Jaden had been found in a gated community after dark, how the police had been called, and how he'd been uncooperative, Jaden's gaze wandered nervously. His eyes landed on Rebecca, and something shifted in his expression. Fear melted into recognition. Rebecca noticed his stare and frowned. "Defendant, do you have something to say?" she asked, impatience creeping into her tone. Jaden hesitated, gripping the table harder. All eyes were on him as the room fell silent. Finally, he blurted out, "I know you." His voice was shaky, but loud enough to carry. Murmurs spread through the audience. Rebecca's brow furrowed. "Excuse me?" Jaden's voice cracked as he repeated, "I know you. You're my mom." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Rebecca froze, her pen hovering midair. For the first time in her career, she looked genuinely shaken. Her eyes scanned Jaden's face, searching for answers to a question she hadn't known to ask. "What did you just say?" she whispered, her voice unsteady. "You're my mom," Jaden said again, tears now streaming down his cheeks. His voice carried a pain far deeper than his young years should hold. The room was deathly quiet, the world seeming to hold its breath. Rebecca's hand trembled as she set her pen down, her heart pounding against her ribs. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, though her faltering voice betrayed her. Her steely demeanor cracked, revealing something raw, fear. Jaden's voice, though soft, pierced through the silence. "You gave me away when I was a baby. My foster mom told me everything." Rebecca's breath caught. The courtroom walls seemed to close in, the whispers of the crowd growing louder. "Shaken," she announced. "We'll take a short recess," her voice barely steady as she retreated to her chambers. Inside, the memories she had buried long ago resurfaced, clawing their way back. At 18, she had been a scared girl in a small town, forced into an impossible decision. She thought she'd left that life behind. But now, it had come crashing back, manifested in the tear-streaked face of the boy sitting in her courtroom. Rebecca felt her breath catch in her throat. She had anticipated this question, but now that it was spoken aloud, it felt like a dagger. She looked down at her hands, unable to meet Jaden's gaze. "I was scared," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was 18, just a kid myself. My parents, they told me it was the only way." They said you'd have a better life with a family who could give you everything I couldn't. She paused, swallowing hard. But not a day has gone by that I haven't thought about you, wondered where you were, if you were okay, if you were happy. Jaden wiped at his eyes, his small hands trembling. I wasn't, he said, his voice breaking. I kept waiting for you. Every time someone new came to foster me, I hoped it would be you. But you never came. Rebecca felt her heart shatter. She leaned forward, her hands reaching out hesitantly. I'm so sorry, she said, her voice cracking. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I see now how much I hurt you. I can't change the past, Jaden, but I want to be here now. If you'll let me. Jaden studied her face, searching for any hint of dishonesty. For a moment, he said nothing, his expression unreadable. Then slowly he nodded. I want to know you. I want to know why you didn't fight for me, but mostly I just want to know if you care. Rebecca felt tears streaming down her face. I do, Jaden. More than you can imagine. And if you'll let me, I want to make up for the time we've lost. I don't know how, but I want to try. Jaden's lip quivered, and he took a deep, shaky breath. Okay, he said softly, his voice fragile, but filled with a glimmer of hope. Rebecca reached out, her hand hovering uncertainly before Jaden tentatively placed his small hand in hers. In that moment, the years of pain, doubt, and separation began to crack, allowing the faintest light of healing to shine through. It wouldn't be easy, but for the first time, both of them felt like maybe, just maybe, they could start again.